Good morning. Welcome to College Knowledge 304. We have some great topics to discuss today. You're going to have a great segment today. I like to throw in a teaser to start off with. I believe the FCS could be leaving. And if you tune in, you'll find out why I say that later on. To start the segment off, I'd like to talk about some good college matchups today. We have West Virginia versus Oklahoma, Kansas versus Iowa State, Miami versus Clemson, Texas versus Kansas State, Gonzaga versus St. Mary's, and Marshall versus Louisiana. And I looked at those games to kind of plan the day. The earliest those games kick off is noon, and that's Kansas versus Iowa State. And the latest game is 10:30, and that's Gonzaga versus St. Mary's. These are games I think that are going to be really good and will be exciting to watch, including that Texas versus Kansas State game. Texas is ranked number 10, and Kansas State is ranked number 7, and that kickoff is at 4 o'clock tip-off. I think that's going to be a highly competitive game to watch and one you might not want to miss. I think the West Virginia versus Oklahoma game is going to be a really good game also. Looking at both teams are about the same record in the conference. They're sitting at 2-7. I know they're wanting to pick it up. We're getting closer to tournament time. And I know both teams want to be on a hot streak. They're not wanting to be going into the conference tournament with only maybe 3 or 4 wins. You're probably not even going to get into the NCAA tournament if you don't pick it up. But those are some great games. I think it's going to happen tonight and should be worth watching. Another thing we have tonight is UFC. Some of the fights are starting at 10 o'clock tonight, with the main event happening at 1 o'clock in the morning. Now, what's great about it tonight is it's free. Apparently, some of my friends told me it's free to watch, and they're supposed to have a couple really good fights tonight. So, might be something to set your TV to watch. And we are now going into the Super Bowl next week. We know which 2 teams made it, and that is the Eagles and the Chiefs. I believe that it's really not going to be that good of a Super Bowl, in my opinion. I think the Eagles are going to win. Looking at the Chiefs, they're just not that healthy. And Pat Mahomes seems like he may have lost a step this year. And if you compare them to the Eagles, they have a great offense, great quarterback, really good defense, and I don't see how the Chiefs are going to be able to keep up with the Eagles. And it would also be good to see Hurns get a Super Bowl ring. If you remember him and Tua, he was actually benched at Alabama over Tua. And it's turned out that Hurns is actually the better quarterback, in my opinion. And he's definitely the most healthy quarterback. So let's talk about the FCS, why I think it's in trouble. We look at a couple teams from last year that went into the FBS at James Madison, and we also had Sam Houston going to Conference USA. It seems like the FCS is starting to lose some of their power teams that do really good in the FCF tournament, and that could be troubling for them. There's also a report back in December that the Atlantic Sun and the WAC want to go to the FBS. And if both of those conferences would go to the FBS, that would really cripple the FCS, and it would make it a whole lot smaller than what it is now. And if I'm other conferences, I might be trying to say, well, maybe it's time that we go to the FBS. If you look at these two conferences, there's really not that big of teams going into the FBS, wanting to go into the FBS. We have teams like Eastern Kentucky, which I don't consider Eastern Kentucky that big of a school. So if that would happen and these two conferences go to the FBS, why wouldn't other conferences not want to do the same? So I think the FCS could be hurting and could be potentially be done in the near future. So one rivalry I think that would be great for the state to pick up with, I think that we need to get the Friends of Cole Bowl back, especially in basketball. It's just a great thing for the state. You know, the two head coaches need to put their differences aside. It's just silliness. And they need to realize that, you know, they need to come to an agreement. I put the blame on Huggins. He acted like when Dan D'Antoni made the statement, you know, let's play one game at Marshall, one game at Morgantown. He kind of got offended by that for whatever reason. I think that the Friends of Cole Bowl in Charleston was great. I think it should remain in Charleston. It's a little bit longer drive for West Virginia, but it's still a neutral site, and it was always 100% capacity. It was always an exciting game, many overtime games. It was just great for the state. And that really needs to come back. And it was highly competitive. Marshall won some. West Virginia won some. West Virginia probably won a few more, but Marshall always kept it a good game, and sometimes they would win the game. So, yeah, I think that Huggins and Dan D'Antoni need to come together and get this Friends of Cole Bowl started again. It's just nonsense that it's not happening. And if you look at Huggins, he's one of the best coaches ever in NCAA. He has, you know, over 850 wins, which is pretty unheard of. He's had multiple, you know, NCAA Sweet 16, Elite 8 appearances. And if you look at Dan D'Antoni, what he's been able to do at Marshall, it's just been amazing. He took Marshall not too long ago into the NCAA tournament and ended up beating Wichita State and moving to the round of 32, where West Virginia and Marshall actually got to play. And I remember the fans in the state, they really loved it. And it was an excitement. So, yeah, we really need to get this Friends of Cole Bowl picked back up. So, just a recap. You know, we got some great college basketball games tonight. The Super Bowl coming up looks like it's not going to be that good, in my opinion, but it would be nice to see Hearns win the Super Bowl ring. And I'm sure if you're an Eagle fan, you will be excited about that. And that UFC, like I said, it's free. It might be worth checking out tonight. The FCS looks like it's in trouble. And we didn't have a whole lot to say this week, Football's winding down. Baseball will be starting pretty soon. So I'll have a little bit to talk about baseball in the future. And everybody have a great afternoon and watch some great sports games today.